Give it a good 5 minutes, Jamie.
You think?
Yeah. I mean, you can have it on and just let people know we're waiting for a few more to join.
Is there a way of knowing how many people are logged on? Is it? Can they hear me? Yeah, we'll give it a couple of minutes, yeah? Is there a way how many logged on? Okay, I think we will start. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Australian and New Zealand Child Death Review and Prevention Group Conference for 2023. My name is Jamie Blackburn, and I'm an Executive Director here at the Queensland Family and Child Commission. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today, the Turrbal and Niagara people here in Queensland, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So I will be the MC for today. You will see that there has been some last minute changes to the agenda. We are kind of filling the time in terms of making up time. So we've started a bit later. So thank you for accommodating some last minute changes. You will have seen that Anne Hollins was due to speak, but due to a last minute change in her plans, so I think she's been called for estimates. She's no longer available to speak. In terms of a few housekeeping points, so there will be an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the session, which will be later on this afternoon. But there will be an opportunity to use the Q&A bar on the bottom of your screen. And so you can register those questions as we go. We can certainly see them our end and moderate those questions and save them up for that Q&A session later on. There may not be time to answer all of those questions, but we will try our best to get through as many as we can. Failing that, we'll try and close those questions off offline and via email in the following days after the conference. There is also on the bottom of the bar, you will see that there's something called a discussion forum. Please feel free to use this function if you want to share any observations and comments throughout the presentations. I'd also like to let you know that we are recording today's sessions and they will be available within a few days and we'll send them out to participants so they can view those and share those. I would now like to hand over to Mr. Luke Twyford. He's the Principal Commissioner here at the Queensland Family Child Commission. Over to you, Luke.
Thanks, Jamie, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Australian New Zealand Child Death Review and Prevention Group Conference for 2023. My name is Luke Twyford and I'm the Principal Commissioner of the Queensland Family and Child Commission and also Chairperson of Queensland's Child Death Review Board. I too want to start today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet, right across Australia. I acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians across the lands, the seas, the skies where we work, walk, live, laugh and love. I acknowledge the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures, their strength and knowledge, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Here in Brisbane, I'm joining you on the land of the Yuggera and Turrbal peoples. And in the context of today, I want to specifically acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities successfully kept their children safe for thousands of years. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this year's Australian-New Zealand Child Death Review and Prevention Group Conference. It's quite a mouthful. The Australian New Zealand Child Death Review and Prevention Group is a collaboration of all state and territory child death review teams across Australia and New Zealand. It was established in 2005 with the aim of developing nationally and internationally comparable child death statistics. A large group of people right across Australia and New Zealand working together to better understand and prevent child deaths. Those child death and prevention teams operate in every jurisdiction. They're often small groups of committed individuals, and they each have a special role in our world. Today, that small group is collaborating and connecting, but they're expanding their circle to people from all walks of life who are interested in research to prevent child deaths. More than 160 professionals from child protection and child health and wellbeing sectors are joining us online today to share learnings, discuss best practice in child death registration, review and research. Today's agenda covers a range of insightful topics across the use of data and knowledge sharing to deepen understanding of child deaths, responding to accidental suffocation in sudden infant deaths, and the future of analysis and reporting of child deaths. About 13 years ago, I took a job at Northern Territory Department of Child Safety, moving as a career bureaucrat from Canberra into that role. And I can remember the trepidation and fear that I would be managing a child death review team and the fear of not knowing what might be in those case files and what content I might be exposed to. I must say, over the last 10 years working with child death review teams, I continue to find them the most passionate and committed people, driven to make a real difference. For me, today's conference is an opportunity to reflect and connect. I reflect that childhood is a critical time for developing and learning, establishing the building blocks of future health and well-being. During this time, children are vulnerable and their right to safety and to live free from harm must be protected. I firmly believe that we all live in communities that want children to be safe. It is very rare, very unusual for anyone to think that a child should not be safe. So when a child does die, it's tragic, incomprehensible, easily misunderstood. And the death of any child for any reason is incredibly tragic and leaves lasting impacts on the family, the neighbourhood, the community, and our society. Child death often seems to go against the natural order of things. It leaves us asking questions. How and why did this happen? What could have been done differently? Who's at fault? But most importantly, what can we do to prevent this from happening again? In preparing for today, I've also reflected that for too long, death has been a taboo topic, particularly the deaths of children. Discussing death creates fear. It makes us uncomfortable. But against this prevailing social norm, this group, the Australian and New Zealand Child Death Review and Prevention Group, has been meeting annually since 2005. That this is still an annual event in its 18th year is a real testament to the important work that the people involved do, and that their need for connection, best practice information sharing, research sharing is critically important. Of course, over those 18 years, child death review, registration and research teams have evolved in response to the need to better understand the factors contributing to child deaths. We've seen a greater focus on health promotion, environmental change and legislation, and the creation of public policies designed to safeguard the lives of infants, children and young people. Through their work, we have seen many steps taken on our pathway to greater childhoods. Some of the work we have seen includes building a better understanding of safe infant sleep practices, the creation and change of pool fencing regulations, not just their design, but also their compliance, learner driver licensing rules and community education campaigns, new standards for child car restraints, a focus on home fire safety, and numerous product safety standards. So how do child death prevention and review teams achieve this change? Well, for me, it's when we collect systematically information about each individual child death. It increases our understanding of the causes and the context. We take incidents of tragedy and turn them into evidence that guides us to understand prevention. It is this collection of experiences of the children that have died that helps us to learn and improve. Child death review and research represents our commitment to improving the lives of infants, of children and young people. It is a tool in our arsenal to combat premature child mortality and build a better world. Too often in my role, I find myself speaking about events involving children that simply shouldn't have happened. In child safety, in youth justice, in domestic and family violence settings, the scourge of mental health, substance abuse, and the cost of living pressures, creating a social disconnection. That is why the work you do to better understand child deaths and improve prevention initiatives is so important. Governments and the community look to professionals like you to analyse the circumstances, the data, the research, and the trends to help us find solutions to the problems we wish we didn't have. We have to learn from every child death in every way we possibly can. So let's have a look at what the data is currently telling us. Sadly, around 2,000 children lose their lives in Australia each year. However, child mortality rates are improving. The group of researchers who have pulled together today's conference and will be meeting again on Thursday produce an annual report analysing child death data from every jurisdiction. It's incredibly important that we don't compete or compare jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but instead understand that every number in this report is a child. It represents the loss of a child from their family, from their neighbourhood, from their community, and from our country. Age is a big factor. The largest proportion of child deaths occur in the first days and weeks of life. And it's also incredibly sad to note the clear overrepresentation of First Nations children. It's apparent in every jurisdiction where we have data. Some of our speakers today are focusing on particular categories or causes of death. Most child deaths in Australia are due to natural causes, but sadly, many are still attributed to preventable causes: sudden unexpected deaths in infancy, transport accidents, drowning, suicide, and fatal child abuse and neglect. What stands out for me is the deaths from unexplained causes. This category includes SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome. Understanding and preventing sudden unexpected infant deaths is a particular focus of the session after lunch today. It's an area where we need ongoing research to help us to better understand what we can do to prevent these tragic incidents. If I speak briefly about what we're doing in Queensland, in the last year we released the Safer Pathways Through Childhood framework. It provides a 5-year forward plan for QFCC's child death prevention activities and research. We've introduced a framework that takes a social justice approach to our work and that focuses on achieving health equity. It's an important new approach for us here in Queensland to move away from transactional statistical understandings of death and place the lives of each child into a socio-economic, ecological model where we better understand their life journey. As one of the first pieces of work under Safer Pathways, we released an information paper analysing all drownings and non-fatal immersions occurring in backyard swimming pools since 2011. This analysis changed our approach by looking at the rate of drowning against the number of registered residential pools, rather than the population in an area. This brilliant research question, created by one of our researchers, threw new light on the regions and councils where residential pools were a greater risk to children, and in fact indicated to mayors and local councils and compliance bodies where new attention might need to be paid. In a later session, you'll hear more about our paediatric sepsis project, which we're working on in partnership with Children's Health Queensland. Other projects in the pipeline relate to preventable child mortality and adversity and social vulnerability. Both projects aim to improve our understanding of and the ability to report on the interwoven nature of complex social issues compounding in a family's life. If you have a particular interest in our Safe Pathways project or any of this work, please reach out to us. We want to build a connected force for good across Australia and New Zealand, where we share, collaborate, and connect our research. So in conclusion, and put simply, governments and communities can't reduce the number of child deaths without the data, evidence, solutions, intellect, and passion that you bring to make a difference. So thank you. Thank you for your attendance and interest in today's conference. And for those of you who work in child death review and child death registration and research teams, thank you so much for the work that you do. Your efforts and the efforts of your peers does save lives. The knowledge and policy that your work gives rise to does create and improve safety. And for that, you should all be immensely proud of yourselves. So here we are today, 6 hours, more than 160 professionals from the child protection, child health and wellbeing sectors joining together to share learnings and discuss best practice in child death registration, review and research. I recognise working with the topic of child deaths is not an easy job and it can be exceptionally confronting, but it is highly valuable and unfortunately necessary. I hope you enjoyed today's conversations. I encourage you to ask questions and join in comments, that you connect with your peers, and that today provides you the opportunity to further grow your expertise and connect with those who do work that is critically important. Thank you.
That was a great reflection on what has been the last 18 months and since you joined the QFCC, and thank you for your leadership in this space. We have definitely delivered some quite important projects in the last 12 months. Before we move on, so we don't have the next session starts at 10:30, but before we move on, I just want to check in with people whether they're having, is everyone logged in okay, or is there anything that people want to raise now before we will have a slight pause and we'll keep to the schedule of the 10:30 start. So we will just have a holding 10 minutes or so, but I just want to make sure everyone's got the technology working as expected. We seem to be all good. Thank you so much. So we will just be back online at 10:30 for the first session of part of the agenda. Thank you.